All right, everybody. Our next and final review of the day is going to be for the film The Bike Riders. The Bike Riders, which is written and directed by Jeff Nichols. This movie got delayed. It was supposed to come out
Mhm,
last year. It was supposed to come out towards the end of last year, but it ended up getting delayed, got pushed back into this year, and
mhm,
then now it's finally out. So like I said, Jeff Nichols, this is his film here, written and directed. He's also done films Take Shelter, Mud, Loving, or some of his other films. Like I said, mostly known in a lot of critic circles there.
mhm,
His films usually get highly praised, highly regarded. Especially Take Shelter. I've heard a lot of things about that
mhm.
movie.
Yeah, Take
Um,
Shelter is amazing.
yeah, I've heard a lot of really great things about that film. Wanted to check it out. And even you have Michael Shannon, who was from that film, who's also in this film. What is this about? What's kind of based on a true story somewhat. There was
Mhm,
a journalist kind of going around, photographer, documenting this gang in the Midwest. Specifically, you see
mhm,
this is Chicago, 1965. So it takes place a lot between the mid 60s to kind of mid 70s, a little bit late
mhm,
70s there in the Midwest, because you see other territories of these gangs. You see Chicago, you see Indiana, you see Wisconsin there. But it's primarily focusing on the biker gang in Chicago, which is led by Tom Hardy. Johnny is his name, who leads a gang called the Vandals,
mhm,
which he gets inspired from watching the Marlon Brando film on TV just one day,
mhm.
and he's like, "Yeah, I want to do that." You know what I mean? I
Yeah, it's
kind of
like, why can't I have a place where I can just, hang out with my boys, ride my bikes, drink beer, act a fool with the boys.
Yeah, and you see the person that's documenting this, the photographer, is, Mike Feist, who people might say we just saw him in Challengers, actually, just saw
Mhm.
that actor in
Yep,
Challengers.
just on Challengers, I think, deserved an Oscar nomination for West Side Story. But
Uh,
he's kind of like because the movie is told mostly through, an interview, like, several years later between Mike Faist and, Jodie Comer, who plays, Kathy, who I think really is, if this movie did have a protagonist, she's probably the closest to it.
yeah, and this is the real life guy right here that Mike, Feist is playing right here, Danny, Leon here, Diane Lyon, and yeah, this is the real guy, so you see his photos that he took of, like, the different gang here that you see. And Jodie Comer, as you mentioned, is kinda more of the lead character. She's the one that's really, detailing all this information of the beginning of the gang, the origins of the gang,
Mhm.
and then the eventual kind of downfall of the gang.
Yeah, the downfall where what starts out as, just a motorcycle kind of social club where it's, just guys hanging out, just guys drinking beer, riding their bikes, commiserating about how much they love riding and kind of this free spiritedness of it, to eventually becoming what, what became of motorcycle gangs today.
Yeah. It's kinda like that transition you see of, like,
Mhm.
things crime and things kinda going up from the '60s to
Mhm.
'70s, more dramatic
Yeah,
kinda
yeah,
crime there that kinda
yeah,
happens.
crime that comes in with a lot of chapters popping up, a lot of members coming back from Vietnam and kind of taking that, just going more into crime.
Yeah, and you see it at first, like you said, it's just a gang just for dudes to kinda blow off some steam, hang out,
Uh-huh.
race their bikes,
Yeah,
you know? Uh
even early in the movie, they kind of get into a little scuffle with another rival gang, but the second it's over, it's like, "Yeah, come on, let's get a beer."
Yeah, you know what I mean? And some dudes they meet from Indiana, and, I forgot what was their name. They were
Oh,
the
the Gary, Rogues.
Rogues. Oh, yeah, that was their
Yeah,
name,
it's
yeah.
like the funniest thing is Tom Hardy's kind of like de-escalating. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, you know this guy? Yeah, yeah, we used to truck together." And Austin Butler just comes in throwing hands.
Yeah. And Austin Butler, we see that who's another member of
Mhm,
the Vandals there. So primarily, you get kind of Jodie Comer, who's the one detailing it. She's kind of
mhm,
the main character here. Then you get the members of the gang. The most prominent you get is Tom Hardy, who's Johnny,
mhm,
who's the leader. He's the one that founds it. Then you get Austin Butler in this as well, and
mhm.
then Jodie Comer, who's the one that she gets into the gang because she starts a relationship with Austin Butler, who
Yeah,
his
it's like,
character is
yeah,
Benny.
yeah, the opening of the movie, it's like it's Kathy meeting Benny. It's like they, meet at this bar that's run by the club, and then he just like gives her a ride home and just like stays outside of her house. And then it just jump cuts to, so yeah, 5 weeks later, I married him.
Yeah. And the cast is filled with a lot of good character actors. Yeah, Michael Shannon is in this. We mentioned Mike Faust is in this. We mentioned Norman Reedus, who's in this. Who I guess any movie involving bikes is you got to invite Norman Reedus. Is got to be here. You see Boyd Holbrook is in this. So good, kind of good character actors coming in this. I think the biggest thing about this movie, the biggest crime in this movie, is
Mhm,
that I don't feel like there's not a lot of depth there. Well, even though you
mhm,
got a lot of these great actors, it's just like I don't feel like you really know these people that much,
mhm.
in the movie. What
Well,
say you?
well, I think I kind of get that, especially with the character of Tom Hardy, and I think a lot of that is owed to because he's so much emulating Marlon Brando, and almost to a fault, and he's like trying to maintain that persona, and so much of this is kind of like a love triangle almost between Benny, who's played by Austin Butler, Kathy, and Johnny.
Mm,
It's almost played like a love triangle between all three. And what really, for me, works about this is kind of seeing this, like, on the surface, kind of like very beautiful thing about this club where these, misanthropes and kind of marginalized people can just get together and commiserate and be together about something. And the slow descent and seeing how that gets corrupted by time, by outside entities, by how things pass in culture.
yeah. Different members of the gang coming and going.
Mhm,
You see that. Yeah, and yeah, you can say he's inspired by Marlon Brando in the movie The Wild One.
mhm.
There, and this is him from the movie there.
Yeah,
Um,
and like there's a scene where he's watching the movie and he's like doing the Marlon Brando voice to himself, almost like he's trying to nail it down.
yeah. So I think that kinda gets in the way a little bit of kinda knowing these characters
Mhm,
fully. Even with the Austin Butler character, I think it's kinda the
mhm.
same thing, with that.
Well,
Jodie.
with Austin Butler, I almost feel like that's by design because even though Butler is like nearly top billed in this movie, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue. And I think that's what really works about him because he is very much the personification of everything that Tom Hardy's character is trying to be. He is that guy who is just that. I'm all about freedom. I'm all about just riding my bike and doing what I want.
Mm, yeah. So it's just like, where the directions kinda go. So I can kinda see that, some people kinda feel like it's a little bit empty there. I think I felt that a little bit with the movie, with some of the characters. Looks gorgeous. I mean, when they're,
Mhm.
I think the cinematography of the movie looks really good when they're riding the bikes, when they're kinda
Yeah,
doing that.
the cinematography is really good, and so is the sound design. Every time they're like riding their bikes, revving their engines, you almost feel it in the theater.
Mm, yeah. So you do kinda see that there, and, I did kinda like, when you see kinda the downfall of the gang of kinda one misfortune that happens after the other
Mhm.
and kinda things they have to do to maintain this certain level of respect or the certain level of it.
And then even things that happen within the club, within, members, and something that especially happens to Kathy, which thankfully they don't go as far as I was worried a little bit that they would.
Yeah.
But even then, it's traumatic in a way, and kind of even, with a character like Hardy who is, loves this club, loves what it used to be, just seeing how defeated almost he gets, even to the very end of the movie.
Mm, yeah. Um, and, like I said, good performances in this. I think you got a lot of good kinda people kinda coming in. It's like but I don't feel like you get to know them, like Michael Shannon.
Mhm,
There's a lot of kooky kinda characters there that
mhm,
that is interesting a little bit on paper, I feel like, and you see a little bit of them, but again, not much time dealt with them, like Michael
mhm.
Shannon or Boyd Holbrook or, um, Norman Reedus who comes in. He's a character, he comes in from, California, he's a California biker. He kinda comes in. He looks like
Mhm.
a fucking mess, by the way, too, Jesus Christ. His teeth are all rotted and shit, and, yeah, but some interesting stuff I think you could do with that I don't think they go into enough.
Mhm.
Tom Hardy, I mentioned him. I think Tom Hardy has got one default American accent that he does. Like, and you watch Capone, you watch Venom, you watch What's another movie where he plays an American
Oh,
in it?
Warrior almost to an extent.
Warrior, he does that little thing when he kinda
Yeah,
talks like this.
he was like almost like half speaking. He's like trying to whisper. He's like trying to do almost a like Midwest Chicago accent, but like very under his breath.
Yeah,
But
I mean
I the accents in the movie, it is kind of one of those things that could is kind of rife for criticism, but I got used to it very quickly. And even though I joked earlier in the show, it's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, that's kind of unintelligible. It's like I still understood everything that his character was about.
yeah, because this is supposed to be the Midwest. You're supposed to have I mean, Jodie Comer, I mean, because you think about the Midwest, Chicago, it's supposed to be more Polish
Mhm.
type kinda accents maybe. I mean, some people think
She is straight up Minnesota
yeah,
almost.
I don't know. I don't think they did they say her character was from or did they say she was from somewhere
I,
else?
I don't think they say explicitly where she's from.
Yeah, so I mean, she's drawn and Jodie Comer, I think, is British, right?
Yeah,
She is
she's an English actress.
yeah, so, yeah, some people might find I mean, some people I heard found it a little grating, her voice, a little kinda annoying, especially when she starts
It,
out right away.
it's an accent that takes getting used to, but for me, once you got into the movie, once you get past that first interaction with Austin Butler, I got over it.
Yeah, I settled into it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it takes a little probably getting used to there, but I settled into it pretty nice there. Um, yeah, and this is the both of them there. You think Austin Butler? You think he's just doing Elvis again? Or you think how do you feel about him in the movie?
I mean, when he speaks, it is kind of like a little bit toned down of his Elvis voice, but by nature of the character, he is a character that doesn't say a lot. It's like his actions speak louder for him. He's like very stoic. He's very just introverted. It's like because so much of the drama of this movie is Benny being having to choose between Kathy and Johnny in the club, and it's never explicitly said. It's kind of low key in that sense.
Mm. uh yeah. So I think this is the first time I've ever seen a Jeff Nichols movie before.
Mhm,
Like I said, I'm interested to see his other kind of projects, like Mud or Take Shelter. I've heard really great things about. Um, and then as a movie, I think this is just it's fine.
mhm,
It's all right. I wouldn't say it's my best of the year.
mhm.
Um, I just think it's kind of decent on that front. For me, I just kind of give it a lowish tune in. For me,
Okay.
what say you?
For me, I was kind of when I first saw the trailer, I was kind of like, okay, this is just another like let's get a bunch of great actors, make them do weird voices, and just kind of vibe out. And the movie is that, but also it is that in kind of the best way possible, where you are having this really fascinating look at this subculture and kind of seeing how the purity of this thing is just this club where it's just all these like kind of misfits get together and kind of vibe out when they're off work. It was like all of that and seeing how that gets twisted and corrupted into this very vile and in some cases allegedly evil thing, and seeing the descent of that and seeing how Tom Hardy reacts to that and seeing the struggle that Jodie Comer and Austin Butler go through throughout this movie, I thought it was a very fascinating look and where I think a lesser movie would have gone more overtly just made a feature length adaptation of something like Sons of Anarchy. I liked how low key this movie really was. Even an early scene where Tom Hardy gets challenged for leadership at the club, it's like very matter of fact. It was like knives and fists. It was like, well, I don't want to kill you, so fists, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, old school kind of ways, old school kind of rules, and you see
Mhm,
kind of how that goes away after a while.
mhm.
And
Or it stays there, but it gets like twisted into this more darker and edgier place.
mm, yeah.
But
So
me, I really like this movie. I just really love the performances. I love the kind of feel that this feels like a movie that would have been made back in like the 70s or the 80s, which I think Nichols was harkening back to, even down to how much Tom Hardy is channeling channeling Marlon Brando, and almost Butler is channeling an actor like James Dean
Yeah.
to an extent. I really enjoyed this. I had a great time with it. I'd give this a solid peak. I'm like looking at my best of the year list right now, and I'm like, you know what? Shit, did I like the Bike Riders this much? I'm like thinking about it. It is like I saw this movie yesterday, and I'm still thinking about it right now.
Yeah. And even references another classic motorcycle film, Easy Rider. The reference that, which I never seen Easy Rider before. I actually never seen it
Hmm.
myself there. But yeah, so you gave it a peak. I gave
Yeah.
it a kind of a lowest tune in for the Bike Riders there in theaters now. If people want to check it
Oh
out.
yeah.